one of the smallest countries but with the biggest history. In this podcast, we'll explore the history of the land of Israel, its culture, its places, and the stories nobody tells you. Welcome to Israel con Mati.
The resolution of the Dutch Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstained.
I want to live to see that day of peace between you and us, of peace between all our neighbors and us.
Attention, this video includes the sound of a siren. I am now next to a shelter, a public shelter, and I will go inside if the siren goes off. Welcome to the second episode of Israel in 10,000 Steps. While I do my daily 10,000 steps, you will accompany me and we will talk about Israeli history, about philosophy, religion, day-to-day stuff, culture, people, and much, much more. Remember, you can follow me in all social networks as Israel con Mati. That's Israel with Mati in Spanish. Today, we're going to talk about a ship that almost sunk this country into a civil war. We're talking about the Altalena. Let's get into context. It is 1948 and this state was born about a month ago. We're being attacked by all the Arab countries that surround us and some that don't in the independence war. It was a desperate situation, and in the middle of it, there were Jews firing upon other Jews in Israel. Yes, this happened. This is not Fauda or some action movie. This actually happened. And again, this was the Altalena ship. With the new state, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, were created. And it gathered different groups, among them the Haganah and Irgun. The Haganah was the main group, the biggest group. They were pragmatic and they worked in some cases with the British. And the Irgun was a little bit more revolutionary, and they were very much against the British, among other things because the British were preventing Jews escaping the Holocaust from coming to the region. Before the IDF, the Haganah was being led by David Ben Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel. And the Irgun was being led by Menachem. The Haganah and the Irgun didn't really like each other very much. Neither did Ben Gurion and Menachem. In the 11th day of June, a ship sailed from France, loaded with lots and lots of weapons and many fighters, some of them Holocaust survivors. This was being organized by Menachem and the Irgun. On that very same day, there was a ceasefire in the independence war, and part of the ceasefire said that no new weapons should arrive to the zone. Begin told Ben Gurion about the ship because he didn't want to keep this as a secret. He didn't want Ben Gurion to think that he was doing it behind his back. And on June 20th, the Altalena arrived to Kfar Bitkin, a coast next to Tel Aviv. Ben Gurion told Menachem that everything that was on that ship, all the weapons, were going to be transferred to the IDF. And Menachem said that 20% would go to the Irgun. Part of the reason was that in the UN partition plan, Jerusalem would be an international zone, and Menachem wanted some weapons for the members of the Irgun that were still there defending the city. Ben Gurion initially agreed to the 20% of the weapons going to the fighters of the Irgun in Jerusalem, but then Begin demanded assurances of the rest of the weapons going to Irgun members that were joining the IDF. David Ben Gurion saw this as a threat to his authority. Ben Gurion said no. He said that now we were a country, we were a state with one command and one army, and that he would not let it be a failed democracy, and he would not let the state have different armed groups with different agenda and goals. One state, one democracy, one army, one command. While these discussions were held, the IDF and the Irgun members unloaded the weapons in Kfar Bitkin, or part of them. This negotiation between Begin and Ben Gurion did not go well, and at some point, no one knows who started it. Bullets started flying. The Irgun and Menachem Begin went on board, and they took the Altalena to the coast of Tel Aviv, in the eye of the public and of UN observers that were there. He thought that by doing that, he could buy time so that he could speak with Ben Gurion and negotiate further. Ben Gurion gave the ultimatum to Begin, and he said, if you don't give me all the weapons as you have to, we will open fire. Menachem Begin said he wouldn't, and Ben Gurion gave the order. The IDF started firing on the Altalena, and the Altalena returned the fire. When Begin realized what was going on, he took the microphone of the radio and he gave an order to everyone in the Irgun. He basically said something like, do not fire, not even today. A Hebrew weapon should not be used against a Hebrew. We're not starting a civil war. And the people from the Irgun did exactly that. They stopped firing. At this point, the Altalena was damaged and it was sinking. The members of the Irgun that were on the ship had to swim to the shore. 16 members of the Irgun were killed, 3 members of the IDF were killed, and many were wounded. So who was right? Who was wrong? Maybe they were both a little right and a little wrong. Those who believe that Ben Gurion was right, they think that what he did unified the country. I am now going to the shelter because we might have missiles coming from Iran. So I will have to stop filming for a few minutes and I will come back when the threat is over. I am now next to a shelter, a public shelter, and I will go inside if the siren goes off. Okay, I'm out of the bomb shelter, so let's continue. As I was saying, the people who think that Ben Gurion was right, they say that what Ben Gurion did unified the country and allowed us to be an actual democracy with a unified people, with a unified army, with one command. And it prevented us from being a group of militias, each one with their own agenda, with their own goal. Ben Gurion called the cannon that attacked the Altalena the sacred cannon, and he said that if the temple is rebuilt at some point, that cannon should be next to it. People who think that Begin was right think that he, by ordering people not to shoot back, prevented a civil war that would have happened if he didn't have gave that order. Later, Begin said that his greatest achievement was not what he did as prime minister or the peace agreement that he signed with Egypt, but the order that he gave that day to avoid this civil war. Ben Gurion and Begin were political rivals for many years after the Altalena, and they kind of grew on each other, and in the end they had this kind of respect for one another. Ben Gurion said many years after the event that if he had known Begin as he knew it when he said this, things would have been very different. Okay, let's do a summary of this episode. In 1948, the State of Israel was established. In June, a ship called the Altalena sailed from France to Israel with lots of weapons and combatants. This ship was being brought by Menachem Begin and the Irgun. Begin and Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, had discussions about the weapons on board, and Begin asked for 20% of it for the Irgun. And he also asked for assurances of the rest of the weapons going to the Irgun members that were joining the IDF. Ben Gurion said no. Ben Gurion said that everything was to go to the IDF because there was only one command and one army for the new state. The discussions really didn't go anywhere, and at some point Ben Gurion gave the ultimatum to Begin, and he said if he didn't surrender the weapons, then he would fire. The IDF attacked the Altalena, and the Altalena returned the fire, but quickly Begin gave the order to stop firing. 16 members of the Irgun were killed, 3 members of the IDF were killed, and many were wounded. Ben Gurion believes that his actions made possible the state that we have today as one democracy united with one army and one command. Begin believes that by giving the order to not shoot back, he prevented what was going to be a civil war. For many years, Begin and Ben Gurion were rivals, political rivals, but in the end, they did have some kind of respect for one another. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. You can follow me as Israel Komati in all the social networks. And thank you for questioning what you know, which is very important. And just thank you for being. See you the next time. Hopefully without Iranian missiles.